Welcome to Riddle's Court, the home of the Scottish Historic Buildings Trust, a charity and building preservation trust that brings new lives to old buildings. The Scottish Historic Buildings Trust became involved in Riddle's Court in 2008 when the building was no longer fit for purpose. We set about raising nearly £6 million to restore the building, and it opened as a centre for learning in 2017. Our work here was inspired by Patrick Geddes, who 120 years ago gave new life to the building by restoring it as one of the first halls of residence for Edinburgh University. His motto, Vivendo Discimus, by living we learn, is carved into the archway behind me and has inspired our approach to the work to the building and our learning programmes that happen within its walls. The internal courtyard here at Riddle's Court is unique. There is no other courtyard development in the whole of the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. When Baillie McMorran bought the land to build Riddle's Court, he bought 2 rig plots, and that allowed him to create this internal courtyard in 1587. It was a grand tenement that Baillie McMorran built. Only the rich and wealthiest of Edinburgh lived here. Most of the other tenements in the Royal Mile had shops on the ground floor, merchants on the first floor, and the poorer people lived at the top and the bottom. Not only did it have an internal courtyard, but it had pleasure gardens to the south. That meant that the wealthy and rich and influential of Edinburgh chose to live here. Riddle's Court was such a high-status building that King James VI visited twice. The first time, he hosted a banquet in the room we now call the King's Chamber. The wonderful feature in this room is its medieval painted ceiling. This ceiling was believed to be created especially for the banquet, and you'll see that it has emblems that relate to food. We have the menu for the banquet, and in today's money, the banquet and furnishing of this room cost in the order of £14,000, so it was an extravagant banquet. The King's Chamber has been restored as a holiday let as part of our project. It's available to hire, and who can imagine sleeping under a medieval painted ceiling? It's the most wonderful experience in the world. We're in the room which hosted the banquet, and I'm now going to take you to an interesting room, which is our accessible toilet. And as part of the project, we discovered the fireplace that created this medieval banquet. We've seen the King's Chamber, and we've now come downstairs into a different part of the building, and you'll see behind me that we're in the most desirable, accessible toilet in the country. We intended as part of this project to have a toilet in this room, but we didn't expect the fireplace that we've exposed today. When we took down the partition, 10 tons of rubble fell down the chimney and exposed this wonderful fireplace, complete with an intact bread oven, which was the medieval pizza oven of its day. We're now going to take a walk upstairs to one of the oldest rooms in the building that we think predates the tenement that Baillie McMorran built. We're in the McMorran room. This room is an unusual room because it was entered from Upper Bow. We know it predates the grand tenement that Baillie McMorran built because we've done some dendrochronology on the timbers, and they predate the rest of the timbers in the building. It's an unusual room and quite a high status room again because it has a buffet, which is essentially a high-class cupboard for your dining room crockery. Today we use the McMorran room as a meeting room. Not only do we use it for our own in-house meetings, but it's available to hire. We've taken the opportunity to show on the walls some of the other buildings and projects that the Scottish Historic Buildings Trust has worked on throughout Scotland. It also gives us the chance to show off some of the archaeological finds that we've discovered as we've unpicked the 400 years of history of Riddle's Court. These finds range from a medieval key, to a children's teacup, which tells the story of Old Mother Hubbard, to a Victorian raffle ticket. The most important tenant ever to live at Riddle's Court was Alexander Seaton, who was Chancellor of Scotland in the 17th century, and this room has been named after him. Seaton created this beautiful plasterwork ceiling that you can see here today, and this is very similar to some of the other ceilings that he created in his other properties. The fact that this plasterwork ceiling survives today is extraordinary. With the massive infrastructure works that happened in Edinburgh in the 19th century, The back wall of Riddle's Court was completely removed and rebuilt to create a beautiful curve that you can see as part of Victoria Street. The Seaton Room leads on to the Geddes Room, and this is perhaps the room in the building where Geddes had most influence. He commissioned the artist Thomas Bonner to paint this beautiful ceiling that you can see above me today. This ceiling tells a story both of the history of the building here at Riddle's Court, but also the university. Geddes would have been inspired by the medieval ceiling in the King's Chamber, and he created this as the backdrop to the dining room for the students. Imagine being a student in Edinburgh in the 1890s and coming to stay at Riddle's Court and dining under this incredible ceiling, talking about the politics of the day and the subjects you were studying at university. A magical experience. And then you could have withdrawn to the Seaton Room and sat in one of the niches that Geddes created and continued your discussions and debates. Our connections with Patrick Geddes continue to this day. We're in touch with all three of his grandchildren, all of whom have visited the building and have very kindly gifted this painting that you can see behind me of Anna Morton, Patrick Geddes' wife. Today, not only can you come and visit this ceiling and see the conservation work that was done as part of our project, but you can also dine underneath it, just like the students did 120 years ago. We have 400 years of history here at Riddle's Court, and we're standing in a room, the lift lobby, which shows all of those 400 years of history. All historic buildings have problems with access, and in this part of the building we were able to solve that problem by putting in a lift that takes us right from the basement, which is at Victoria Terrace, all the way through to the second floor of the Lawn Market. It's called the Great Glass Elevator because, like where I'm standing, you can see the years of history behind the alterations that have happened over the 400 years. It also gives us a good chance to show what Scottish Historic Buildings Trusts have done to the building and our approach to the restoration of Riddle's Court. We have on display one of the original windows from Baillie McMorran's tenement. It was removed from the building in the 19th century, and we're delighted to be able to repatriate this window back to Riddle's Court. If Patrick Geddes was here today in the library, he wouldn't recognise it. When the students lived in Riddle's Court, this room was divided into 5 individual bedrooms, each student having their own room and a window. The reason why this room is called the library is that in the 1850s it was one of the first subscription libraries in Edinburgh. The progress in terms of adult learning has continued today through Patrick Geddes and his use as a university, and also our use of the building as a centre for learning. Our project here at Riddle's Court was completed in 2017, and we were delighted that Prince Charles came to open the building for us. The Scottish Historic Buildings Trust receives no core funding for the work that it does. The £6 million that we raised for Riddle's Court came from a number of sources, and we're truly grateful for all of their support. It's important, the work that we do. A derelict or redundant building in the heart of a community can often be a blight on that community. But a restored and vibrant building within the heart of a community can enhance the well-being and lives of the people around it. The success of the project here at Riddle's Court has meant that this building now has a sustainable future, and it's taken back its rightful place in the heart of the old town of Edinburgh.